as low as you can while still planing, and then you heat it up and keep it on a plane in the lighter spots, and you just kind of look for the puffs, and when you get in a light spot, you try and sail up. If there's a puff there, you sail higher to get to the puff. If not, you just go B&G to the mark. Doing that on the reaches, and then the second beat, really important to identify before you get to the leeward mark what's going on the second beat. Sometimes it was easy because you could look at the radials, you could see, okay, they're really lifted on starboard with a big lift or a big puff from the right, or they're really lifted on port with a big lefty. And if you could identify that before you got to the leeward mark and make your game plan for the second beat before you even round the mark, if you're behind someone, you could execute attack right out of the mark if you wanted to go to the left, and that way you set yourself up to be going the way you want to go on the second beat. I think the tactical game today was really having your head out of the boat and trying to identify the situation before the other boats around you. If you were able to do that, it could give you a little bit of an advantage. And then I don't know if people have questions on sort of setup or boat speed stuff, but if you guys have thoughts or questions on that, I'd be happy to talk a little bit about that as well.
What was your order of operation in terms of like getting patrols off around the weather mark or the reach or the downwind? Were you picking the board up just as you rounded, or just after, or you didn't care and you got it later, or?
Well, what I was doing, what I would like to be doing, or sometimes two completely different things. But I think it depends. If you're going on a reach or run, you kind of do things a little bit differently. Some things are more important. For me, ideally, when it's breezy like this, the first thing I want to get off, if I'm rounding to go on a run, you got to get your bang off, because if your bang's tight, you can't bear away. So that's priority number one. Make sure that's off.
How soon before the rounding?
Depends on how quickly you can get everything off. If you can do everything within a boat length of the mark, and then get back to your main sheet and have it ready to ease, that's good. But if you need more time, you got to take the time. I mean, whatever amount of time you need to get it off before you get to the mark is what you have to do.
So is that the first thing that you do is just use the bang?
Mm-hmm. And then next thing I'll go do is the Cunningham. And third, sometimes if I'm a little bit high on the ley line, I'll use my out haul before I go around the mark. If it's a really tight ley line and I'm barely making the mark, the only thing I'll let off is the Vang, and then once I'm around the mark, I'll pop the Cunningham as I'm bearing away. So I typically go Vang, Cunningham, and then once I'm downwind, really situational whether I'll go out haul or centerboard up right away. I mean, if it's wavy and I round the windward mark, I don't care about letting the out haul off. I'm not even worried about getting a centerboard up. My first priority, if it's windy and wavy, is catch a wave and start surfing a wave downwind. Today we didn't have those conditions, so I was probably just hopping my out haul off right away and grabbing my centerboard almost at the same time. Now, if you're going on a reach, you don't have to ease your bang quite as much as you would if you're bearing away. So I think it's more important to get your Cunningham off on a reach than it is going to a run. So I would ease my out haul a little bit, and you can do it a little bit earlier when you're going to a reach because you're not letting it off as far. So ease it maybe to 2-block tension, and then I would completely blow my Cunningham and then deal with the out haul on the centerboard as soon as I rounded the mark. Oftentimes your out haul, if you're a little bit loose on the upwind, is already preset for when you reach anyway, so you don't have to worry too much about that.
How far out is your centerboard on those reaches?
Not that far.
That high?
Yeah. I mean, if you're not sure how high to put it, a good sort of test is just keep pulling it up, and then once you start feeling the boat go sideways and not going forward anymore, that's too high, and then put it back down until you're going forward the whole time.
When I saw you going upwind one time, it was almost like you were hiking out sideways. Like when I hike out on a hiking strap like this. And when I see you and Andrew, it's almost like you're hiking out sideways and you're facing forward. Is that true? I mean, do you guys twist your body when you hike out at all, or?
The only reason you would sometimes twist is if one leg was getting tired, you could favor one leg and give the other one a break a little bit. But I would think generally, you're pretty at the hips, you're pretty square to the boat.
Yeah.
And maybe you know, you're
Oh.
twisted a little in the shoulders because you're looking around, and it's easier to look if you're slightly tilted that way, but it's not doing it on purpose.
Okay.
And then from further back in the fleet, I found that, especially if it's a really congested grounding, especially with the leeward mark, I found it come around into the mark and just, you know, you mentioned there really wasn't much of a sea state except for, you know, the really choppy, like, garbage that all the other boats have left behind. I found like I was trying to like power up to go through that, and then the boat was just going sideways more than anything else.
You know, I'd say when it's breezy and you're hiking full out, most of the time today, when the wind was up, even if there's chop, I don't think you need to be powering the boat up at all. I mean, if you need a little more power to get through the waves, just put the bow down a little bit. You know, fill your sail and give you as much power as you need.
How far off the boom was your foot upwind? I mean, it varied probably, but
I'd say somewhere 3 inches in the middle. You know, it's pretty flat water, so you could get by today with a range of settings. You know, I think the important thing today would have been most of the time to have your Cunningham cranked, and then your out haul you could be deeper, a little bit flatter, and then the big puff hit, pull the vang on just before the big puff hits, and then, you know, in the light spots I was letting my Cunningham, or sorry, my vang completely off as soon as I wasn't overpowered.
Going upwind?
Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
I'd say 40% of the time I had no vang on today, and then, you know, in the really big puffs, I pulled it on pretty hard, but almost never to the point where I needed to ease the boom to keep the boat flat. The only times I was easing the boom was, I think, that one beat we ran into the leeward mark in front of me. We had that long starboard, and we were pretty lifted in a big puff on starboard, and I put a lot of vang on, and I was easing the boom out about 3 or 4 inches, but I was mainly doing that to go down, put the bow down, and try and get across to the left side. So I kind of went into a fast forward mode as opposed to pointing mode, so I put a little bit more vang on and was sheeted out occasionally, and then just trying to push the boat forward. You gotta hike really hard and, you know, get driving forward towards the left side of the course. But I'd say one of the things to think about is when it's windy, upping and up and down, it's really important to be on the ball with adjusting your controls. So if you have the boat set up for 18 knots and depowered, and then the breeze drops to 10, and you don't ease your vang off, and sometimes even your Cunningham off, the sail will be completely depowered, and once you get in that light spot, you won't be able to point, and you'll be going really slow. So if you can change that gear, you know, just scoot away from the boats around you.
And so in the upwind, you didn't have a lot of vang on in the sailing upwind today?
At times,
At times.
but I'd say more often than not, probably I had it on the 2 blocks, or just a tiny bit tighter. I didn't ever really weigh on it. Like if it's 125,
Yeah.
you know, you're really bending the boom, and you'd be sheeted out anywhere from 4 inches to 1.5 feet, you know, almost all the time. And
Right.
I don't think I had that much vang on at any point today.
Yeah.
You probably have to depower later and build up.
Yeah.
And me.
But the thing is, when it's flat water like this, you can get by keeping a little bit more power in the sail and just being a little bit higher on the pointing side. I mean, so if I got a puff and I got hit by a puff and I didn't have time to get the vang on, I just hiked really hard, and I would just not feather the boat, but I would just stay at a high groove.
Because in this flatter water, you don't get stopped like you
Yeah,
do
you
in
don't
rougher
hit a
stuff.
wave and you don't park, so you can get by with, you know, a little bit less depowered, and you can just kind of stay in that high mode, and you can go okay DMG wise.
Yeah, I noticed many times you started in better spots than everybody else. Like, I know I was behind you quite a bit early in the races. It was really tricky to figure out exactly, do you want to be like a little 50 feet further down the line or further back towards the boat. I think you nailed it more often than not because you got a good jump on a lot of us consistently, you know, during the races.
Again, a lot of that is again, what's that first shift going to do? Maybe the pin is favored by a bunch, but if you can't tack in that big lefty, you're leading into a header and you're getting out of phase. So, hell, the line wasn't that long. The biggest, you know, was 2 or 3 boat lengths between the boat and the pin. And I'd much rather sacrifice a boat length and a half and be able to tack right away on the port if it's a huge lefty than being stuck down there at the pin waiting for everybody else to tack over before I get to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, it's one thing to think about. So if you're starting in a big right shift, the boat's really favored, right? But if the line is square to the average wind, as soon as the lefty comes in, the boats that were down at the pin are going to be on a higher ladder rung. So maybe you want to take advantage of the righty a little bit. So you want to be up near the boat, but you know, maybe you just start to lure to these guys, and then when the shift goes left, they get headed, and all of a sudden you can tack and cross. So you maybe think about situations like that when you're thinking about where to start. And I think another thing to think about on the downwinds, I saw quite a few people swimming, and I think one of the ways to avoid that is if you see a big puff behind you and you're not really sure whether it's going to be a header or a lift, go to an extreme angle. Go like way by the lee or go on a higher reaching angle, and then when the puff hits, you'll be more stable. I think if you're pretty much dead downwind and the puff hits, you're in an unstable position, and you're more likely to flip. So I think reaching just sort of, I would go till the battens are more or less parallel to the boom. I don't want the top of the sail to be folding out, and I don't want it to be hooking to weather. So just so you have nice flow off the leech for a reach, and then downwind, I like my thing pretty loose. You know, maybe parallel with the boom or slightly spilled open. Depends on whether I'm doing a lot of turning to a reach angle. If I'm turning a lot to a reach angle, I need it tighter because I want a little bit more drive off the leech to turn, and then I'll flatten onto waves. So if I'm going that way, I need it a little tighter. But if I'm by the lee a lot, you can be a little bit looser and it's open, and then the puff hits and it pushes it and sort of powers up the sail, and then you can take that power and, you know, sort of reverse flatten the boat and just drive it forward.
Just to be clear, when you say reverse flatten, you're talking about you're by the lee and
You're by the lee
and
you're
you're windward
feeling the
heel
weather.
initially, and you flatten the boat out
Yep.
towards the leeward side.
If you're rounding in a big righty, but the oscillations are quick enough that you know another oscillation is coming. Do you sail by the lee and aim at the mark, or do you ride the big puff dead downwind?
I'd stand it up as long as I could.
That's right. A couple of times today, I saw some people around me. I was very surprised. We rounded in righties, and they went by the lee and aiming at the committee boat. And what it looks like is this. Round the top mark, and we are in a righty. Okay? And the leeward marks are down that way, okay? So, Red Baron rounds and goes by the lee. Golden Child rides it straight down. Who's going to be in the puff longer, Golden Child or Red Baron?
Golden Child.
Golden Child, right? Great. And then the next shift, because it's oscillating, what's the next shift? It's going to be a lefty. Who is going to get the lefty first?
Golden Child.
Golden Child, right? Then Golden Child just takes it right down. And again, in pressure, longer than Red Baron. And Red Baron's here now. And usually, did you notice today the puffs were like breeze on, a little light, then build, 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 wham! And it would hit hard, right? And you want to be on it. Okay, so this guy here is like this. And then now he's got an angle, he's gone by the lee. He's way off over to the side of the rum line, and he's in less breeze over here. He's fallen out of the breeze, so he's sailing in less breeze. And then he's got to come back over here to try and get to the new breeze. While this Golden Child is just ripping along. And I managed to stay in front of somebody today in one of the ladder races because of just this thing. And I was not sailing well today, and I was like all over the place, and this guy's really fast downwind. But by just playing that that shift.
So
Yeah.
Mark, I think if we're talking about oscillations without having the changes in pressure, Red Baron there would be doing the right thing.
But
But today we were seeing like whole sides filling in, and sometimes like when the second shift comes down, it's like dark, huge pressure over here, and then nothing over here. And only thing that matters is getting to the pressure. It's more about that than the angle if you can plane in the pressure.
well, I mean, and typically, in oscillations, this is the way it works. You know, you get a puff on one side and a puff on the other side, and if you get yourself out of phase with it, you're really screwed. So, by playing those shifts downwind, that's how I won the North Americans last week. Because a guy rounded ahead of me, he caught me on the beat, and he and this other guy rounded like this, in a righty like this, and I just blasted off here like this. The puff came here, I came like this. They were looking like this, going very slowly, and I just slowly gained ahead of him, caught him. That was the regatta. Yeah. There are shifts upwind, but there are also shifts downwind. There's a lot to be gained in an oscillating breeze. Lots.